We found children living in the rubble. That's what I remember most about Germany in 1945. Not the destroyed cities or the bombed-out factories or the bridges we had to rebuild, the children. Living in cellars and bombed-out buildings, scavenging for food, looking at us with eyes that had seen too much. 7, 8, 9 years old. Should have been in school, should have been playing. Instead, they were trading cigarette butts for food and sleeping in ruins. I thought the war would be over when the fighting stopped. I was wrong. Lieutenant Robert Chen, Army Corps of Engineers, 291st Combat Engineer Battalion. 28 years old when the war ended. Chinese-American, born in San Francisco, grew up helping my father run a restaurant in Chinatown. Studied civil engineering at Berkeley, one of the few Chinese students they'd accept. Joined the Army in '42 because I wanted to prove I was American. Funny how that works. Having to prove you belong in your own country. The Corps of Engineers sounded perfect for me. Use my education, build things, support the war effort without being frontline infantry. They needed engineers, needed people who understood structures and logistics and construction. I figured I'd build bridges and airfields, help the Army move forward, then go home when it was over. That's exactly what I did. Except going home wasn't the end I thought it would be. We landed at Normandy in July 1944, a month after D-Day. Our job was to keep the Army moving, build bridges where they'd been blown, clear roads of debris, construct temporary ports and airfields. Combat engineering, they called it, working under fire, building things that would probably be destroyed, then building them again. I was good at it. My team, 12 men, all of them decent guys, we could throw up a Bailey Bridge in 6 hours. Could clear a minefield, bulldoze a road through rubble, build a pontoon crossing under artillery fire. We moved with the Army through France, Belgium, into Germany. Lost 3 men during the war. Sergeant Mike O'Connor hit by a sniper while surveying a bridge site. Private Danny Martinez killed when the building we were demolishing collapsed wrong. Corporal James Murphy stepped on a mine we hadn't found yet. 3 funerals, 3 folded flags sent home to families. But we did our job, kept the Army moving, helped win the war. Then the war ended. May 8th, 1945. Germany surrendered. Everyone celebrated. Drinking, cheering, crying. We thought we were going home. They kept us in Germany instead. Reconstruction duty, they called it. Rebuilding what we'd spent years destroying. Seemed simple enough at the time. It wasn't simple. They sent our battalion to the Ruhr Valley in June 1945, industrial heartland of Germany, or what was left of it. I'd seen bombed cities before, French towns, Belgian villages, but nothing prepared me for German cities after years of Allied bombing. Cologne, Essen, Dortmund. They weren't damaged. They were obliterated. 90% destruction in some areas, just gone, replaced with rubble and twisted metal and the shells of buildings. We drove into Essen on June 15th. I stood in the back of the truck and looked at what used to be a city of 500,000 people. The destruction went as far as you could see. Block after block of collapsed buildings, burned out factories, streets buried under debris. Here and there a wall would still be standing, or part of a church, but mostly just rubble. Mountains of rubble. Jesus Christ, Private Tommy Wilson said beside me. Kid from Tennessee, barely 20. How are we supposed to fix this? I didn't have an answer. Our first assignment was to get the Krupp steelworks partially operational. The Allies wanted German industry working again, controlled, monitored, but working. We needed steel for reconstruction. Europe needed steel. The plant had been hit by bombing raids dozens of times. The main buildings were destroyed. Rails were torn up. Machinery was buried or damaged or stolen. We set up headquarters in what used to be an office building. Roof mostly gone, no windows, walls cracked. but it had 4 walls and a floor, which made it better than most buildings in Essen. Assess the damage, the colonel told me. Give me a timeline for getting at least 1 furnace operational. I spent 3 days surveying the steelworks with my team. It was worse than it looked from outside. Not just bomb damage, the Germans had sabotaged their own equipment as they retreated. Blown up furnaces, destroyed controls, removed critical components. What the bombs hadn't destroyed, they had. And everywhere there were people. German civilians living in the ruins of the factory. Families camping in destroyed buildings, cooking over fires made from factory debris, sleeping in offices with no roofs. They'd look at us, American soldiers, with a mix of fear and desperation and something else. Hunger, maybe, or just exhaustion. We need to clear these people out before we can work, Wilson said. Clear them out to where? I asked. Look around. There's nowhere to go. The entire city was ruins. The entire region was ruins. Millions of people displaced, homeless, living in cellars and bombed-out buildings and refugee camps. Where were they supposed to go? That's when I started to understand. This wasn't just an engineering problem. You couldn't rebuild infrastructure without dealing with the people. And there were so many people. We started clearing rubble to access the undamaged parts of the steelworks. It was brutal work. The rubble wasn't just concrete and steel, it was everything. Furniture, clothes, books, personal belongings, lives compressed into debris, and bodies. We found bodies in the rubble. Some from the bombing raids, could have been months or years old. Others more recent, people who died after the war ended. Starvation, disease, exposure. We'd be clearing a collapsed building and find someone who'd been sheltering there who hadn't made it. We were supposed to report them to the German civilian authorities. But the German civilian authorities barely functioned. So we'd stop work, have the Germans in the area help us dig the body out, give them time to bury their dead, then go back to clearing rubble. It slowed our work. The colonel wasn't happy. We have deadlines, Lieutenant? We can't stop every time we find a body. What do you want me to do, sir? Just bulldoze them under? He didn't answer. We kept stopping for bodies. The children were everywhere. Orphans, mostly. Parents dead in the bombing or the fighting or the camps or who knows where. They'd follow us around, begging for food. We weren't supposed to fraternize with German civilians. Weren't supposed to give them our rations. But how do you say no to a 7-year-old kid who's starving? Wilson started sharing his chocolate bars. I pretended not to notice. Soon half the team was doing it, giving away cigarettes, food, whatever we could spare. The kids would eat like they'd never seen food before. Some probably hadn't, not in weeks. One girl, maybe 9 years old, watched us work every day. Blonde hair, filthy dress, too thin. Never begged like the others, just watched. I finally asked her name through an interpreter. Greta, she said. Greta Müller. Where are your parents, Greta? She pointed at the rubble pile we were clearing. In there. The bombing. Last year. She'd been living in the ruins of her own home, surviving on scavenged food, waiting for someone to dig out her parents' bodies so she could bury them properly. 9 years old. We found her parents 2 days later. What was left of them? We stopped work, let Greta and some neighbors have a funeral. Watched a 9-year-old girl bury her mother and father in a crater near what used to be their home. Then we went back to work. By August, we'd gotten 1 furnace at Krupp partially operational. Took 3 months of brutal work. The colonel was pleased, wanted us to move faster on the rest. But the problems kept multiplying. We'd fix the electrical system, then find the water mains were destroyed. We'd repair the water mains, then discover the rail lines were unusable. We'd fix the rail lines, then realize there was no coal to fuel the furnaces. Fix one thing, break 2 others. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And the people kept coming. Not just Germans. Displaced persons from all over Europe. Poles, Russians, French, Dutch. People who'd been slave laborers in German factories, who'd survived the camps, who'd been forced to work and now had nowhere to go. Thousands of them streaming through the Ruhr Valley, looking for home or food or just somewhere safe. We set up a DP camp near our headquarters. Just tents and latrines at first. It was supposed to house maybe 500 people temporarily. Within a week, we had 3,000. Within a month, 5,000. All of them hungry, sick, traumatized. All of them looking to us for help. This isn't our job, the colonel kept saying. We're engineers, not relief workers. UNRWA is supposed to handle displaced persons. But UNRWA was overwhelmed. Everyone was overwhelmed. The scale of the disaster was beyond what anyone had planned for. So we helped. Built more shelters, arranged for food deliveries, set up medical tents. Because what else were we going to do? Watch them die? My team worked 16-hour days, rebuilding the steelworks during the day, building refugee shelters at night. We were exhausted, running on coffee and cigarettes and the desperate need to feel like we were making a difference. Private Wilson collapsed in September. Heat exhaustion and malnutrition. He'd been giving away too much of his rations to German kids. We got him to a field hospital, but he was done. Sent home on medical discharge. Good kid. War didn't kill him, but the aftermath nearly did. The German workers who helped us were desperate for work. They'd show up at our sites every morning, 50 or 100 of them, begging for jobs. We could hire maybe 10. The rest would stand there, hopeless, then wander off to scavenge or beg or try somewhere else. One man, Herr Schmidt, had been a foreman at Krupp before the war. Skilled engineer, knew the facility inside and out. His house was destroyed, family scattered or dead. He worked for us for food and cigarettes. We couldn't pay real wages. "Why are you helping us?" he asked me one day through an interpreter. "We lost. This is what we deserve." I didn't know how to answer. Yes, Germany started the war. Yes, they'd done terrible things. We'd seen the camps, knew what had happened. But watching a 50-year-old man work himself to exhaustion for food scraps, living in rubble, mourning his dead family, that didn't feel like justice. It just felt like more suffering. "We're not helping you," I finally said. "We're helping everyone, including ourselves. Europe needs to be rebuilt." He nodded slowly, went back to work. My breaking point came in November 1945, 6 months after the war ended. We'd been working non-stop, barely making progress. The steelworks was maybe 30% operational. The refugee camp had 8,000 people. Winter was coming and we didn't have enough shelter, enough food, enough fuel to keep everyone warm. They sent me to survey a bridge site outside Dortmund. The bridge had been blown by retreating Germans, needed to be rebuilt to restore the rail line. Standard job. Survey the site, design the replacement, submit the plans. I drove out there with Private Jackson, a kid from Ohio who'd joined us as a replacement. The bridge was gone, just broken concrete pilings sticking up from the river. The rail line on both sides was torn up. Standard demolition. Would take maybe 2 weeks to rebuild with a full crew. Then I looked at the town on the other side of the river. Dortmund, completely destroyed. Not a single intact building visible, just ruins stretching to the horizon. "We're supposed to rebuild the bridge," Jackson said. "Get the trains running." "For what?" I asked. "To bring supplies to a city that doesn't exist anymore. The city will be rebuilt eventually." "When? How?" "Look at it. That's years of work. Decades, maybe. And this is just one city. It's like this everywhere." I sat down on the bank of the river and did the math. Really did the math for the first time. Germany had hundreds of destroyed cities, thousands of destroyed bridges, rail lines, factories, power plants, millions of destroyed homes, tens of millions of displaced people. Even if every American engineer in Europe worked around the clock, even if we had unlimited resources, even if everything went perfectly, it would take years, decades, a generation maybe. And we didn't have unlimited resources. We were already stretched thin, already behind schedule, already failing. We can't fix this, I said. We can't fix any of this. Sir, it's too big. The destruction is too complete. We're trying to rebuild a continent with hand tools and good intentions, and it's not working. Jackson looked uncomfortable. We have to try, sir. He was right. We did have to try. But sitting there on that riverbank, looking at the ruins of Dortmund, I finally understood what we were really doing. We weren't rebuilding Europe. We were putting Band-Aids on a sucking chest wound and calling it medicine. I went back to headquarters and submitted my bridge plans. Standard design, 2-week construction timeline. The colonel approved it. We started work the next month. But something had broken in me. The belief that we were making a real difference, the hope that we could actually fix what the war had destroyed. It was gone, replaced by the grim understanding that we were just trying and failing and trying again because the alternative was giving up. I came home in March 1946. 11 months after the war ended, they gave me a discharge, a handful of medals, and a train ticket to San Francisco. My family was happy to see me. My father threw a party at the restaurant. Everyone wanted to hear about Germany, about the reconstruction effort, about rebuilding Europe. You must be proud, my father said, helping them recover, building a new future. I smiled, nodded, lied. Yes, it's good work. What I didn't say, I left Europe in worse shape than I found it. Not because of anything I did, but because the scale of the destruction was beyond what any of us could handle. The steelworks was maybe 40% operational when I left. The refugee camp had 10,000 people and growing. Winter had killed hundreds. Cold, disease, starvation. The bridge at Dortmund was rebuilt. The city around it was still ruins. I'd accomplished my mission by Army standards, met my objectives, fulfilled my duty. But by any real measure, I'd failed. We'd all failed. The war had broken Europe so completely that fixing it would take longer than fighting it had. I tried going back to civilian engineering, got a job with a construction firm in San Francisco. Good salary, interesting projects, building new things instead of rebuilding destroyed things. I lasted 8 months, couldn't do it. Couldn't focus on building houses for wealthy clients when I kept thinking about Greta Müller living in rubble. Couldn't design shopping centers when I remembered families camping in destroyed factories. Couldn't care about American construction problems when I'd seen real problems, millions of people with no homes, no food, no future. My boss called me into his office in November. Robert, you're distracted. Your work quality is slipping. Is everything okay? How do you explain that you've seen the end of civilization and now everything seems trivial? That drawing blueprints for a garage feels obscene when you remember orphans starving in ruins? I'm fine, I said. Just need to focus better. I quit 2 weeks later. Couldn't pretend anymore. I spent the next year doing odd jobs, trying to find something that mattered. Worked construction, drove a cab, helped at my father's restaurant. Nothing stuck. Nothing felt real compared to Germany. Other veterans understood. I'd meet them sometimes, guys who'd been in Europe, who'd seen the destruction, who'd tried to help. We'd talk about it in ways civilians couldn't understand. The scope of it, the impossibility of it, the crushing weight of trying to fix the unfixable. You did what you could, one guy told me. Medic who'd stayed in Germany until late 45. That's all any of us could do. But what I could do wasn't enough, wasn't close to enough. And knowing that living with that knowledge, carrying that weight, it changes you. I went back to school in 1948, got a master's degree in civil engineering, specialized in urban planning. Figured if I couldn't fix Europe, maybe I could help prevent the next disaster. Maybe I could design cities that wouldn't turn into death traps when the bombs fell. Maybe I could plan reconstruction efforts that would actually work next time. There won't be a next time, people told me. The war is over. We won. It's done, but it's not done. Not for the millions of people still living in ruins. Not for the children who grew up in cellars and bombed out buildings. Not for Greta Muller, who buried her parents in a crater and then disappeared into the chaos of post-war Europe. I wonder about her sometimes. Wonder if she survived. Wonder if she found family, found shelter, found any kind of normal life. Wonder if she remembers the American engineers who cleared the rubble, who found her parents, who gave her chocolate and then moved on to the next project. Probably not. Probably we were just another group of soldiers passing through her life, briefly useful, then gone. Just like the war, just like everything else in those years. It's 1946 now. I'm 29 years old. The war has been over for 18 months. Europe is still in ruins. The reconstruction continues. Slower than promised, less effective than hoped. They're calling it the Marshall Plan now, this idea that America will rebuild Europe. Billions of dollars, years of work, comprehensive planning. Maybe it'll work. Maybe this time we'll have the resources, the organization, the commitment to actually fix things. Maybe in 10 years, 20 years, Europe will be whole again. But I won't forget what it looked like in 1945. The scope of the destruction, the impossibility of the task, the children in the rubble, the bodies we found, the endless grinding work of trying to rebuild while everything kept breaking. I won't forget that victory didn't end the war. It just stopped the shooting. The dying continued, slower, quieter, but just as real. Starvation instead of bullets, disease instead of bombs, exposure instead of artillery. I won't forget that we tried, that we worked ourselves to exhaustion trying to help, and that it wasn't enough. It's never enough. People thank me for my service, tell me I did my part, helped win the war, rebuilt Europe. They see the medals, hear about the bridges and factories and refugee camps, and they don't see what I see. Greta Muller standing in front of a rubble pile, telling me her parents are in there. Herr Schmidt working for food scraps in the ruins of his life. Thousands of people in a refugee camp waiting for someone to tell them where to go, what to do, how to live. Private Wilson, who gave away his rations until he collapsed. Private Martinez, killed by a building that fell wrong. All the German workers who died that winter because we didn't have enough shelter, enough food, enough fuel. We saved some, lost others, built some things, left other things broken, did our best with what we had, and our best wasn't enough. That's what victory looks like. That's what winning feels like. Not triumph, not glory, just exhaustion and grief and the crushing knowledge that even when you win, people still die. Cities still lie in ruins. Children still live in rubble. The war ended in May 1945. But I'm still there, standing in Essen, looking at mountains of rubble, trying to figure out how to fix the unfixable. Still watching Greta bury her parents. Still calculating timelines I know we can't meet, designing solutions for problems too big to solve. I came home from Germany, but Germany didn't leave me. It never will. We thought the war would be over when the fighting stopped. We were wrong.